Como parte do tour que o Pleno News fez pelo set de filmagem da série The Chosen nos Estados Unidos, entrevistamos Luke Dimian e Joey Vahidi, atores que interpretam Judas e Tomé. O bate-papo com eles você confere agora.
To start, I would like to know about the preparation for this role. How did you prepare to play your characters?
Mine is kind of an unfair statement because I grew up Coptic Orthodox Christian, and so I'm very familiar with the story. My grandfather was a very prolific priest in our community, so I am extremely well versed in Old Testament, New Testament, the story of Jesus from the varying points of the gospel, and especially with Judas, I grew a weird fascination with him as a kid. I'm a bit of a black sheep myself, so all outsiders, the people who are usually looked over, looked past, are people that I find extremely interesting. So on my own, I just grew up a lexicon of knowledge of Judas and various interpretations of him. The play Last Days of Judas Iscariot, the graphic novel by Jeff Loveness, Judas. Like I just love this character. So coming in preparation for him, I felt like I did a bunch of homework before I got cast, which was kind of convenient. It was nice. I was like, oh, I've already done the hard work. Now I can just play.
Yeah, and I will say too, you know, in the original text of the story, the Bible, there aren't very many moments to describe, you know, these people. It's like maybe a couple lines here and there in some of the books, and I will say Tyler, Ryan, and Dallas have done such a good job of fleshing out these characters and really bringing them to life and making them very human. So I would say the scripts are kind of like our Bibles in terms of, you know, studying and working on them.
Yeah, no, Tyler and Ryan are fantastic writers. They've given us so much to work with.
That's true. Do you think that there is a lesson that each character, you know, gives to the audience somehow that you could point, even Judas?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for Thomas, I think, of course, he's known as Doubting Thomas, you know what I mean? Which I think is unfair, but...
if anything, you should be called, like, objectively looking at things, Thomas.
Yes, exactly, right? But I think with Thomas, his whole journey is always questioning, you know what I mean? Wondering what's happening around him. He's someone that looks at the world through the lens of logic and reason. So he's not just questioning to question, you know, he's questioning in order to understand and be the best version of himself that he can be. Sometimes that causes him to butt heads with people, but I know of fans that have personally either DM'd me or written letters, you know, that have said that they feel like they can relate to Thomas a lot because they've always questioned things in their life, and sometimes they maybe lack faith or lack trust in themselves, and this person has kind of given them a vehicle to be able to express that, which I think is pretty cool.
I think something that I like that you bring to Thomas too, because a lot of people, when they read the scripture, it's purely just, oh, he's doubting Thomas, he just doubts, but your doubting doesn't come just from like this almost unempathetic form. You're genuinely soft when you look at these things, and it's really sweet because you bring like a soft and a kindness to him, where in fear of things, in fear of losing, and a fear of like the worst outcome, you doubt to protect.
Yeah.
And so I've always enjoyed that in your performance.
Thanks, man.
Because it's not cold. It's really sweet.
But I would say for Judas as well, you know, like a lot of people see Judas as just the betrayer, and that's not the case. You know what I mean? He's someone that's also questioning. He's someone that's trying to do the best job that he can. You know, I don't want to speak for you or anything.
No, I appreciate it. Please continue.
You know what I mean? Like,
my job for me.
It's he's a kid that wants to do the best job that he can and really support the ministry and follow Jesus' way. So I think the cool thing about this show is it really lets people connect to these characters as something that is human, you know, like they can see themselves in these people.
If I can, before we move on, yes, exactly, all that with Judas. And people might find themselves surprising themselves with how they relate to Judas, because I think Tyler put it, our writer, Tyler Thompson, put it perfectly to me in his depiction of Judas for this season, which is just, he is the devoted one. And it's so funny because we see him as this betrayer, but we don't really see why or how he pushed himself to such an extreme when you don't see devotion as such a poisonistic trait, like such a sharp edge of this dual-bladed sword. You think it only cuts forward, but it can cut back. And so much blind devotion can come back to bite you. And I think that'll be interesting to see this season.
Yes. And what can we expect to see in season 4? You know, what can you talk about? What will be the journey of your characters during this season 4?
I think you're going to see Jesus' message get a lot more radical. And with that comes some consequence, you know. A lot of the disciples, I think, feel pretty isolated from one another. Jesus feels isolated from them. The group collectively feels isolated from their own people. So I think it's going to be a lot of people trying to help one another, but not knowing how to.
A lot of mistakes will be made, a lot of misunderstandings, because as Jesus said in the last season, time is running out, and you can see that desperation and those moments of like hardship really come to a head. Like this season is the perfect transition to what we know is coming in the future.
It's gonna be exciting
and sad. It's gonna be really sad.
Cool. And how do you define The Chosen? If you had one word or 3 words, how would you define it to explain to someone who never watched it, maybe?
I guess like a summary of the show is, you know, it's a historical drama about the life of Jesus as told through the eyes of those who followed him. And for anyone that is hesitant to watch the show, I would encourage them to at least check out an episode or 2, because I think people would be really surprised to see at how much they can actually connect to these characters. You know, they're not just these stained glass windows that you feel like you can't touch or anything. You know what I mean? These are human beings with flaws and with passions and relationships. And I think that's something that's pretty cool that the show is bringing to the story.
Absolutely. If I could use 2 words, I'd say entertaining and dynamic. Like the show is filled with so much humor and drama and empathy and intimacy. Like this isn't just a retelling of some story we've heard before. This is a very intense and thought out story of a very important historical figure that existed in history and what that world and what that life might have been like in that time, and excruciating detail that's never been seen or explored before.
Yeah.
It's extremely worth checking out, at least the first season.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.